I want you to picture a number for a second. 49. It's a weirdly specific number, you know. It's not a nice round 50, it's just one short.
Hmm.
Now, imagine that number represents failures. And I don't mean little slip-ups like, burning the toast. I mean full-blown, face-plant, soul-crushing failures,
Okay.
all in pursuit of one single goal. You try to launch the business, zero revenue. Query the agent, rejected 49 times in a row.
It sounds like an actual nightmare. I mean, most of us, and I'd include myself here, we would have logically concluded that the universe was telling us to stop long before we even got to double digits.
Oh, I'd have tapped out at number 3, maybe 4 if I was feeling particularly stubborn that day.
Yeah.
But today, we're not talking about when to quit. We're doing the opposite.
Right.
We're looking at this really compelling piece of analysis called the architecture of persistence. And it's not a biography of Edison or some famous athlete. It's more of a structural breakdown, almost like an anatomy chart, of what actually happens to a person during those 49 failures.
It's a fascinating read because it completely flips the script on how we look at that big win.
How so?
Well, we usually see that 50th attempt, the success, as this, lightning bolt of luck or some kind of genius. But this analysis argues that the 50th success is just a byproduct.
A byproduct.
Yeah, it's the inevitable chemical reaction that's caused by the transformation you underwent during those 49 other disasters.
So the premise isn't that failure is a dead end. It's that failure is the road.
It is the road. It's the raw material you're building with.
So our mission today is to walk that road. We're going to deconstruct the psychological phases of this because it turns out that failing on attempt number 1 feels radically different than failing at attempt number 40.
Oh, completely. The pain changes, the motivation changes, the entire landscape just shifts under your feet.
Okay, so let's get into it. The starting line, let's say failures 1 through 10. The analysis calls this the birth of doubt, but I feel like that's putting it a little politely. This is the shock phase.
It is the shock phase. Absolutely. I mean, think about the energy you have when you first start something hard. You've got what we call uninformed optimism. You've got the vision board, you've told all your friends, you bought the expensive gear.
You feel invincible. You don't know what you don't know yet.
Exactly. And then whack, failure number 1. The launch just flops. The painting looks terrible. And that first cut, it isn't the deepest, but it creates a very specific kind of damage. It introduces a crack in the psyche.
A crack. That's a really interesting way to put it.
It's a fracture in your confidence. Before that first failure, the question in your head is, okay, how do I do this? But after failure number 1, the internal narrative pivots instantly. It becomes, what if I'm not good enough? So it stops being a technical problem and it starts becoming an identity problem.
That's the danger zone. I think we've all felt that. You immediately put yourself on trial. I failed, therefore I am a failure.
And this is the first major filter. This is where a huge percentage of people just drop out. The analysis distinguishes between 2 mindsets here. Those who quit see failure as a verdict, a judge's gavel coming down.
Final.
But the ones who make it to the end, they somehow manage to frame it as feedback.
Which is so easy to say in a podcast studio, but so hard to do when you're staring at that rejection email.
Incredibly hard. And it gets harder because as you move past that first shock into failure, say 2 through 10, you hit a new problem. It's not just your own doubt anymore. It's what the text calls the social mirror.
This part made me wince. This is that enthusiasm meets reality phase.
Yeah.
You're still trying, you're still tweaking the plan, but the people around you are starting to get uncomfortable.
It's the shift in the dinner party conversation. When you first start, everyone's like, wow, that's so brave, go for it. But by failure number 8, the questions change. They get a little pointed.
So,
Yeah.
is that thing still making money?
Have you thought about maybe picking up some consulting work on the side?
It's the silence that kills you, though. It's when they just stop asking because they don't want to embarrass you.
That's exactly it. And that fear of embarrassment becomes a massive barrier here. The text points out that so many people quit in this early phase not because they lack talent, but because persistence starts to look irrational to everyone else.
Well, it looks awkward.
Awkward. You're the person who just can't take a hint.
You're delusional.
Yeah.
That's the label we're all terrified of. Read the room, buddy. It's not working.
And that's where the truly persistent person makes a very specific calculation. It's almost a dark realization. They decide that the pain of stopping, of burying that potential version of themselves is actually worse than the pain of looking foolish.
That is a heavy trade-off. I would rather look like an idiot than feel like a quitter.
Essentially, yes. And if you can make that deal with yourself, you survive the early phase, you get past failure number 10, but then the adrenaline wears off completely. And you enter what is the longest, darkest stretch of the entire map. Failures 11 through 25. The middle grind.
This part of the deep dive really struck me because this is the totally unsexy part of the movie. You know, in a film, this is a 30-second montage with upbeat music. You see the person working late, drinking coffee, and then, boom, success.
But in real life, this phase can take years. And there is no music.
Right.
That is the defining characteristic of the middle grind. It is quiet. The novelty is gone. You're not the plucky underdog anymore. You're just the person who's struggling. And the worst part is the invisibility of the results.
You might be getting better, technically. You might be improving your craft, but the world can't see it yet. Your bank account doesn't show it. The scoreboard still says 0.
And that gap between your internal reality and your external results, that's where resilience is actually built. But it's also where the modern world sets a trap that didn't exist 50 years ago.
And we're talking about the comparison trap, social media.
It is lethal in the middle grind. Lethal. You're sitting there in the wreckage of failure number 18, tired and broke. You open your phone, and what do you see?
Everyone else's highlight reel, the 30 under 30 lists, the funding announcements, the finished marathons. It just looks effortless for everyone else.
And it reinforces the idea that something is wrong with you. Why is this so hard for me when it's so easy for them? And this is where motivation goes to die.
Okay.
And this is a crucial distinction the analysis makes. You cannot rely on motivation in the middle grind. Motivation is a feeling. It's an emotion. It fluctuates.
So if you can't use motivation, what do you use?
Commitment. It sounds a little semantic, but it's a profound psychological shift. Motivation is, I feel like doing this. Commitment is, I promised I would do this. It's a contract with yourself. This phase separates the people who want the outcome from the people who are willing to pay for it. This is where you pay the price.
Working without applause. I think that's maybe the hardest skill to learn in the 21st century.
Oh, yeah.
We are so addicted to those immediate feedback loops, the likes, the comments, the shares. To work in the dark for that long, that requires a total rewiring of the brain.
It does. But if you can stick it out, if you can trudge through that mud all the way to failure number 26, something strange starts to happen. The environment changes again. We enter the phase the analysis calls the pivot point.
And this is where the script gets really, really interesting to me, because it talks about desensitization. And usually when we hear that word, we think of something bad, like you're becoming a robot or you've lost your empathy. But here, it's framed as a superpower.
It absolutely is a superpower in this context. I mean, think about the first time you were rejected or you failed. It felt like a physical blow. Your heart raced. You couldn't sleep.
Of course.
But by the time you get to failure number 30, you've been punched in the face 30 times. You know what it feels like. You know you're not going to die.
The boogeyman isn't scary anymore because you've seen him every single day for 3 years.
Exactly. The fear loses its grip. And when the fear of judgment and that fear of starting over just evaporates, you get this incredible clarity. The noise quiets down. You stop asking emotional questions like, will I ever make it? And you start asking technical questions.
Like,
what specifically went wrong in variable C this time?
you move from drama to data.
That's the mantra of this whole phase. Failure stops being a judgment on your soul, and it starts being just a data point for your system. Data, not drama.
And it seems like this is where the identity shift really happens, too.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, you're an aspiring writer or an entrepreneur wannabe. You're chasing a title. But by failure 35, you're just doing the work.
Yes.
You aren't trying to be something anymore. You are the person who does this thing every single day.
Yes. The desperation fades. It's replaced by this kind of professional detachment. Your attempts become intentional. You're not flailing anymore. You're refining. You're like a scientist running an experiment. If the beaker explodes, you don't cry about it. You check your notes and you adjust the mixture.
Which sounds great. It sounds like you've reached this state of Zen, your machine. But, and there's always a but, the universe has one final test waiting for you. The final stretch. Failures 41 through 49.
The final test. And this isn't about doubt, and it's not about fear. It's about pure exhaustion. Just bone-deep spiritual exhaustion. You've been at this for a very, very long time. And this is the most dangerous phase for a reason that surprises most people.
Which is the logic of quitting.
Right. We tend to think people quit because they're weak or they lose faith. But at failure 45, quitting doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like wisdom.
Oh, I can just hear the argument in my own head. Look, I gave it my all. I tried harder than anyone I know. I have the data. The market isn't responding. It's time to be an adult, cut my losses, and move on.
It's the sunk cost fallacy in reverse. You tell yourself that walking away is the mature, realistic decision. And frankly, if you went to your friends at this point and said, I'm hanging it up, they'd probably applaud you.
They'd be relieved.
They would. They'd say, you gave it a valiant effort. There's no shame in that.
It's so seductive because it sounds so rational.
Yeah.
So why doesn't the person who makes it to 50 quit? If all logic says stop, what makes them go one more time?
This is the deepest part of the whole analysis. They don't keep going because they expect to win the next day. They've given up on that. They keep going because of integrity.
Integrity.
Yeah. At this stage, quitting would feel like a betrayal of the person they have become through the struggle. It would mean admitting that all 49 of those lessons were wasted.
Wow.
They've built an identity around this persistence, so they continue not for the external reward, but because they simply are not the kind of person who stops.
It's almost like stubbornness elevated to an art form.
Yeah.
It's just refusing to let the failure be the final sentence of your story.
It is reclaiming the narrative.
Yeah.
It's saying, I decide when this ends, not the failure.
So you push past the logic, you
Yeah.
ignore the exhaustion, you step
Ah.
up to the plate for the 50th time, and then the tumblers click,
Well,
the
that-
door opens, the breakthrough.
breakthrough.
But here's what I love about this section. It describes that success not as a miracle, but as alignment. Can we unpack that? Because to the outside world, it looks like magic.
To the observer, it looks like you just suddenly got lucky. But from the inside, it feels remarkably ordinary. It feels like the next logical step. Alignment is simply that moment where your skill finally catches up to your ambition, where your experience finally matches the opportunity.
It's like a game of Tetris. You've been stacking all these messy blocks for hours. And then finally, that long straight piece comes down and clears the whole board.
That is a perfect analogy. And that long, straight piece, the opportunity, it wasn't random. You were only in a position to even see it, let alone place it, because of how you managed those previous 49 messy blocks.
But we have to talk about the L word, luck. Because if you succeed on the 50th try, people are going to say you got lucky. And the analysis gets a little spicy here about why society loves using that word.
Oh, we love calling people lucky. It's our favorite defense mechanism. I mean, think about it. If I look at your success, and I have to admit that it's the result of you suffering through 49 failures that I wasn't willing to endure, well, that reflects pretty poorly on me.
It highlights my own lack of grit. It makes me feel lazy.
Right.
It's so much safer for me to say, well, she just knew the right people, or he was just in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. It gets me off the hook. I don't have to examine my own choices. But the text argues that while luck absolutely exists, it favors the persistent. It's statistically inevitable. If you stay at the table long enough, if you keep rolling the dice, eventually your number will come up. The success on the 50th attempt wasn't an accident. It was a mathematical certainty for the person who refused to leave the room.
You just outlasted the odds.
You stayed long enough to get lucky.
So you've done it. You climbed the mountain. You have the success. But the analysis ends with this really profound point about the aftermath. What's the real prize here? Is it the money? The fame?
Those are nice, sure. But the real prize is the psychological transformation. The text calls it the death of fear.
That sounds dramatic.
It is, but think about the implications. You have just proven to yourself in the most visceral way possible that failure cannot kill you. You have survived the absolute worst-case scenario 49 times.
You're inoculated.
You are unshakable. A person who gets success on the first try is often terrified of losing it. They have imposter syndrome because they don't know if they can do it again.
Right.
But the person who succeeded on the 50th try, they know exactly how they got there. Their self-worth is no longer tied to the outcome. It's tied to their capacity to endure.
That is the lifelong advantage. You could strip away the money, take away the business, drop them in a new city with nothing, they'll be fine. Because they know the recipe.
They know that failure is just data. They know that the middle grind eventually ends. They are dangerous in the best possible way.
So let's bring this back down to earth for everyone listening. Because most of us aren't at failure number 49. Some of us are at failure number 3, dealing with that social mirror, feeling awkward at the dinner party.
Or maybe at failure 27, doom scrolling on Instagram and just feeling completely invisible.
Or maybe at failure 0, just paralyzed because you're terrified of that first crack in your confidence. What's the takeaway here? How do we apply this architecture of persistence?
I think the core lesson is to reframe your relationship with the struggle itself. We are conditioned to think that if we're failing, we're doing something wrong. that failure is the opposite of success.
But this suggests failure is just the raw material of success.
It's the bricks. You can't build the house without the bricks. The number doesn't matter. You might succeed on attempt 12 or on attempt 80. The point is, you have to stop viewing the failures as signs to stop and start viewing them as information.
Reflect, don't retreat.
Precisely. The person who failed 49 times wasn't repeating the same mistake. That's just insanity. They were iterating. They were listening to the data. If you stop now, failure is guaranteed. That is the only certainty in this whole equation. If you quit, the story ends.
But if you keep going, the ending is still unwritten.
The possibility remains. And really, that's all you need.
It's funny, we started this whole deep dive talking about how depressing the idea of 49 failures sounds. But looking at it now, it's actually weirdly empowering. It sort of democratizes success. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be some kind of wizard.
You just have to be stubborn in the right way.
You're stubborn in the right way. I like that. So here's a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We always look at the person standing on the podium, and we wonder what they have that we don't. We look for that magic ingredient. But maybe, just maybe, the only difference between the person who failed 49 times and the person who changed everything on the 50th is just the courage to try one more time.
Failure isn't a wall, it's a door. You just have to push on it long enough.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.